All right, today we are diving into an absolutely wild chemistry quest. And I mean, this was an epic, multi-year undertaking with a goal so out there it almost sounds like a joke. We're not talking about some weekend project here. This was a massive, massive effort.
So let's just get right to it. The entire experiment, all those years of work, it all boils down to this one kind of crazy question. Can you actually take a box of disposable vinyl gloves and, with a whole lot of chemistry, turn them into something you can eat? Something spicy? I know, it sounds completely absurd, but believe it or not, the answer is hiding inside the molecules.
And here is the secret sauce, literally, that makes this whole thing even theoretically possible. See, those vinyl gloves are soft because of something called a plasticizer. And chili peppers? Well, they get their heat from a molecule called a capsaicinoid. Now here's the kicker. If you look at the chemical structures of these two things side by side, parts of them are weirdly similar. The whole quest is built on this one brilliant, crazy idea. What if you could just chemically snip a piece off the plastic molecule and use it to build the spicy one?
So that's the game plan. But you gotta walk before you can run, right? Before they could even think about building that spicy molecule, they needed the raw materials. And that meant starting the first leg of this journey, breaking down a bunch of plastic gloves to get that one crucial piece.
The process started by chopping up 100 vinyl gloves. Yeah, 100. And soaking them in rubbing alcohol to pull out that key plasticizer. Then, they used a strong chemical base to basically slice off the molecular tails they needed, which created a new substance called isonanol. But the stuff was a mess. It took a grueling 6-hour distillation just to get it pure. And after all that, they had 97 grams of their first precious ingredient.
Okay, so ingredient 1 is secured. The next step was to turn it into the first half of the final spicy molecule. The plan seems simple enough. Use a chemical called potassium permanganate. Should be straightforward. But after trying again and again and again, the result was always the same. A complete and utter failure. Nothing. The entire project just slammed into a brick wall.
It was pretty clear the old plan was a bust. So, it was time to pivot to a much more powerful and much trickier chemical called Jones reagent. And this process was incredibly delicate. I mean, they had to add the reagent drop by drop over 3 solid hours, making sure the temperature never, ever went above 5 degrees Celsius. After all that, plus neutralizing the leftovers and a whole series of complicated purification steps, it finally worked. The first half of the spicy molecule, isonanoic acid, was officially created. Now, you probably think getting that first half was the hard part, right? Well, you would be wrong. Turns out getting that piece from the glove was actually the easy part. Now came the real monster of a challenge, what was truly the quest's darkest hour, building the entire second half of the molecule completely from scratch. And this is where things get really weird. It just so happens that the other half of the spicy molecule looks a whole lot like vanillin, the chemical that gives vanilla its signature flavor. So the whole quest took a bizarre left turn. The new plan was to take vanillin, turn it into a chemical called vanillamine, and then stick the two halves together. So yeah, the project wasn't just turning plastic into hot sauce anymore. Now it was turning plastic and vanilla into hot sauce.
So, to make this phenylamine, they tried a promising but pretty risky method involving mercury. After days of careful prep work, getting all the starting material just right, they ran the reaction and it was a bust. A total failure. An entire week's worth of painstaking work just gone, down the drain. It seriously felt like this part of the project was cursed. With pretty much no other options, it was time for a huge gamble. After remaking all that starting material from scratch, they tried a completely different, high-stakes method: hydrogenation. This meant filling a flask with their chemicals and then sucking all the air out and replacing it with pure hydrogen gas from a balloon. For a full 24 hours, that little balloon just sat there, slowly feeding hydrogen into the flask, just hoping, it would finally create the missing piece.
And after all that, the result was, well, confusing. The basic tests, like checking the melting point, they all pointed to another failure. The white powder they made just didn't match what the textbook said it should be. But then, they put it in a much more advanced machine, an NMR spectrometer. And its analysis? Perfect. It was a real moment of truth. Do you trust the simple tests, or do you trust the fancy machine? They decided to trust the machine and just keep going.
Okay, this is it. Both halves of the molecule were finally ready. It was time for the grand finale, the climax of this entire 2-year journey. Combining the part made from a plastic glove with the part made from vanilla to create pure synthetic spice.
And in what was becoming a seriously frustrating theme for this project, the first attempt was a total failure, again. After carefully mixing the two precious ingredients, the reaction produced nothing. Well, nothing but a tiny, useless smear of oily junk. It was just a gut punch, being so close to the finish line only to fail again. But then came the breakthrough. Turns out, the chemistry was fine. The problem was a simple, stupid mistake. They'd used the wrong solvent. So, with the very last of their materials, they set up the reaction one final time, using the correct solvent. They let it run for 20 hours and then did one last, intense purification. This was it. No more material, no more second chances.
And it worked. It actually worked. The final product was this, nordohydrocapsaicin. This beautiful oily stuff is the synthetic molecule they've been chasing for 2 long years. It's almost identical to the compounds that give chili peppers that fiery kick. The treasure at the end of this insane quest had finally been found.
So all the ridiculously complex chemistry was over? All the fancy machines had given the thumbs up? But, there was still one final, unavoidable test to really truly prove that the whole experiment had worked. It was time for the payoff.
You heard that right. After all those years of work, the only way to be absolutely 100% sure that you've actually made a spicy molecule is to put it in your mouth. Now, they prepared an incredibly tiny amount, because if this was the real deal, it was going to be unbelievably potent.
So, what was the verdict? Well, at first, nothing. For a few seconds, it just tasted oily. But then, bam, pain. Oh yeah, it was undeniably, intensely spicy. It was a success, and the confirmation was so powerful it actually caused a weird side effect, these painful, spicy hiccups. The quest was officially and painfully complete.
Now for the best part, the final delicious step. They made a base hot sauce with ingredients that have absolutely no natural spice: roasted red peppers, onions, garlic. Then they took that pure spicy oil, dissolved it in a bit of ethanol to make it mix better, and stirred it right into the unspicy base, creating a truly one-of-a-kind synthetic hot sauce.
So, the final verdict? Well, first up, the flavor. And you know what? It was surprisingly good. A solid 7.5 out of 10. That roasted pepper base really made for a genuinely tasty sauce.
And what about the heat? Did it actually pack a punch? Oh yeah, a 7 out of 10 for spiciness. That's a respectable, definitely challenging level of heat that'll make you sweat a little.
So in the end, after 2 years of failures, breakthroughs, and some truly mind-bending chemistry, the impossible was achieved. They took plastic waste from disposable gloves and flavor from vanilla sugar and turned it, step by painstaking step, into a genuinely good spicy hot sauce. How wild is that?
And this whole experiment really points to a much bigger idea. If something as real and visceral as flavor and spice are really just a result of specific molecules arranged in a specific way, it just makes you wonder, right? What other flavors, what other sensations are hiding in the chemical building blocks of the most unexpected things all around us? What else could we make?